Thank you. Uh, Good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon.
Respected Dr. Gopal Shankar ji, Dr. Sarveshwar PRAHARAJ, Architect LOVLESH Sharma, our esteemed speakers of the day, from faculty from architecture and all engineering disciplines, students of various colleges. I feel delighted to welcome you all today on this auspicious day of World Habitat Day and World Architecture Day as well. Architecture is a noble profession, especially when we are practicing the same for betterment of masses and providing them shelter, which is affordable as well as eco-friendly. So theme of the day is housing for all. So the next 1.5 hour, we are going to experience and learn government policies, uh, future need of housing in India, use of technology to facilitate government policies, and practice of affordable housing for masses. So at GNDC, we have more than 6 decades legacy of excellence in academics and research, and we are privileged to host such a learned guests from various domains of uh, professional fields, and we look forward to strengthen our bond between institutions in coming times also. So on the behalf of Guru Nanak Dev Engineering College and GND School of Architecture, I heartily welcome all guest speakers, participants, faculty members, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I'll hand over the session to my co-host Jaya. Over to you, Jaya.
Thank you, Ishika. Greetings for the day to all. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce to you all Dr. G. Shankar, founder and chairman of Habitat Technology Group, Thiruvananthapuram, Kerela, India, which was established in 1987. It is totally committed to the concept of green and humane architecture. Over the years, this group has been recognized as the largest NGO in the shelter sector in the South Asia, committed to sustainable building solutions. Well, talking about our keynote speaker today, Dr. G. Shankar, a Padma Shri awardee, completed his architecture degree from College of Engineering Trivandrum, 1982 batch, MS from Birmingham School of Architecture, UK, and a postgraduate diploma in journalism. Inspired by the life and work of eminent architect Laurie Baker, G. Shankar has always given priority to the housing needs of the common man, the marginalized, the fisher folk, the slum dwellers and tribals, which was earned him the title of People's Architect. Since 1987, it has also been the UN consultant for disaster mitigation, Sri Lanka and Maldives. He is also the chairman of the National Committee constituted by the Government of India to formulate guidelines on disaster-resistant building technologies. He has won many laurels and is also a member of a number of national level bodies, both official and non-governmental. We welcome you, sir. All of us are privileged to have you with us. Thank you. Prior to the session, I request our audience to keep their microphones on mute mode and webcams on off mode. If you have any questions during the session, please type them in chat box. We'll bring them up at the end. Thank you. Over to you, Shankar sir.
I'm sorry, I don't think I'm visible on the video screen. Am I visible? Am I visible on the video?
No, Shankar
Yes,
sir.
sir.
You can see me?
No, sir.
I'm not able to see my image on the screen. I'm sorry for that. Thank you very much, Engineering College, for giving me this opportunity. I recognize the presence of Honorable Principal Sehbal Singh ji, the distinguished panelists. Today, actually, it's an extremely busy day for me. From 7 o'clock, I had been in and out of functions. And that is why in the chat box, you can see a message that I posted because I need to leave at 2:50 p.m. So probably I'll finish it in 30 minutes. And if you have some questions, one or two questions I can take, and we will go forward on this. See, from last few years, we have been actually, celebration is not the word for today. We actually have to observe the day. Celebration days are over. We are going through pandemic times, COVID times. A lot of stresses are there. And today we are actually going to discuss about a very hot subject, very painful subject, talking about housing for all. And we are still daring to dream, talking about better urban future. I've been in this sector for the last 30 years. I've been in this sector, not only as an architect, but also as an activist. Let me tell you that I had the huge privilege of getting into dialogues, getting into policy formulations, getting into very meaningful journeys, not only creating architectural expressions for the poor, but also talking about why this kind of sustainable, eco-sensitive, disaster resilient, energy efficient, cost efficient architecture is necessary for the country. As we all know, the census figures are not right. In 2001, we gave a figure of around 3 million families without homes. But we, remaining in the social development sector, we believe that there are more than 70 million people who are without options, who do not have proper houses. What do you mean by a proper house? It's a critical question that we have to answer. What do you mean by a house? What is the kind of adequacy a house can provide? I was actually greatly privileged to be a part of Indian delegation to Habitat 2 at Istanbul in 1996, and later a few years back at Quito, Habitat 3, which happened at Quito in Ecuador, as a part of Indian delegation. In 1996, people often ask me, what is your contribution to the habitat sector? I will say it with such pride and pleasure, as I was instrumental in getting a word to the habitat agenda. What is that word, you might ask me? It's about adequacy of housing. When we define a house, we should have a very clear idea about what a house means. My dear friends, young architects out there, it's not about building four walls. Habitat is much beyond that. We call it habitat literacy, architecture that goes beyond the creation of four walls, designing of four walls. It talks about India. When we are talking about 70 million families without proper housing, how can you sideline them, dispossessed and the marginalized, and the poorer sections of society? They don't have anything over their head. They don't have proper houses. We are all staying in very safe, secure environment and trying to talk about sustainable housing. There are 70 million people out there who have names like us, who have identities like us, who wants to also have a decent house to live in. They also need architect services. They are out there asking for an intervention. And what are we doing as a fraternity? This is a question probably I would like students to take up at some point in their career, because it's a critical question that you have to answer. I was talking about the 70 million people out there, 70 million families out there. 70 million families is a huge number, almost 1/3, 1/4 of the total population. We are talking about people without proper houses. What do you mean by proper houses? If you don't have clean cooking space, if you don't have clean toilets, I won't consider that as an adequate house. What is the disturbance? Can you hear me proper? Can you hear me proper?
Yes, sir.
And this is intervention that we brought.
वही देख रहा हूँ मैं कौन है.
This is one critical. You have to, I mean, the participants kindly mute yourself, because I'm getting some disturbance on the line. Please mute yourself so that I can be heard. Having said that, I was very instrumental as a part of Indian delegation to get that word into the habitat agenda. Habitat agenda now talks about two particular elements. It talks about adequate housing. It also talks about habitats in a kind of sustainable human settlements. It's very critical. All these words are very critical when you're talking about housing for all. Housing for all is a distant dream. We actually started the 5-year plans, which is the blueprint of India's aspirations, India's dreams for development. 5-year plans, which come out in every 5 years, they reflect the nation's dream, the dream of the population to aspire for development like this. Unfortunately, till the 8th document, which happened in as late as 1980, look at that. We got independence in 1947. The first plan document was first plan document. What is happening? First plan document. Can you hear me? You can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me properly? Yeah, okay. The first plan document actually came out in 1950s, and we had to wait till the 8th 5-year plan document to get a focus on housing activities, construction activities. Construction activities both as a promise and a problem. You should understand that construction sector gives maximum employment in this country. We are unorganized, but let us internalize the fact that construction sector gives maximum employment opportunities in the world. But by the time we reached 1980, the houselessness, when we talk about the basic needs of people, we are talking self-reliance in clothing, self-reliance in food. But when you talk about self-reliance in housing statistics were not really, laid out before the public. By the time we realized that housing is a huge problem, we went out of control. Now, let me make a statement. No government, no ruling machinery will be able to comprehend the problem, internalize the dynamics of the problem, and solve the problem. So what do we do as academicians, as architects who are going to build the future India? Can we just stare it and go? Can we just stare at these figures, tell the others that somebody's problem is not our problem? I'm an architect, I want to build beautiful buildings and get away with that. No, you cannot do that. Being a true citizen of India, we cannot just leave the poor people out. This is the basic question that World Habitat Day and World Architecture Day is bringing before you. This is why I thought the girl who introduced the subject, she was talking about celebration of India. My dear friend, this is not celebration, this is an observance. Because these are stark facts, stark facts that should keep you disturbed the rest of the world, rest of your life. When I say that, I say with such passion and compassion about social housing, it is going to happen. It is probably going to be a bread earner in the future. I've been talking about the dynamics of urbanization. Urbanization is happening at a pace and intensity which is not really acceptable. We are talking about 90% urbanization happening in very, very poor countries like sub-Saharan African republics like Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia. We are talking about 90% urbanization happening. In places like Addis Ababa, 95% urbanization. In Buenos Aires, Brazil, Argentina, again we are talking about a similar situation. It's sad that pace and intensity of urbanization is very, very harsh in third world countries. India, very soon, I may not be alive at that time, but probably in 30 years' time, India is also going to be completely urbanized. The rural-urban divide is slowly going off. You should see that. Earlier in 1960s, 70s, we were talking about 50% cities, 50% rural areas. Now we are talking about 70% urban and 30% rural. 2050, 60s, we'll be talking about 100% urbanized India. When I talk about 100% urbanized India, you should also bring into focus the problems that are going to be there. Let me tell you, I know we are going to pandemic times, stress times around. Architects have a new domain to work on. Let me tell you that students of architecture, I'm not looking at the academicians and the practitioners of practicing architects. I'm just looking at the students. We have an exciting domain which is appearing during these times. Which is that? It is the fringe between the urban areas and the rural areas. What I call as a transitional area. Transitional area is a world of creativity. You can build with whatever you can. You can build it with cardboard, you can build it with paper, the vocabulary of built materials is something for you to choose. This is where you're going to work. And this is going to be an exciting domain for you. Exciting domain for you. Transition, architecture is going to be transition area because that is going to be infested by middle class people and lower middle class people. You have a huge responsibility, huge role to play in creating beautiful architectural expression. Now, which are the challenges that we are facing now? India, we don't have the resources now. That means, put it very plain. Government doesn't have the resources. People don't have the financial resources to make the basic house, basic tenements. We don't have the money. So what do we do? On the other hand, Kerala had been going through very bad floods. 2018 we had floods, 2019 we had floods. Everything is being attributed to climate change. Now, who is responsible for the climate change? Who is responsible for the climate change? We, the creators of built environment. We, the fraternity of architects and engineers, we are primarily responsible for the climate change. I know I'm making a very brutal statement, but let me tell you this. We, as a fraternity, as a breed, we are responsible for the climate change because we build up, built-up environment of this planet is due to our intervention, architects and engineers who may call infrastructure. Now, I'm sure some of you must be wondering about the statement that I'm making. But my dear friends, I'll read out one or two strategies. Since paucity of time is there, I will not dwell at length, but I'll just read out some statistics which you should internalize and take it into your heart. India, Kerala, for instance, I come from Kerala. Let me be very region specific. Kerala, we have 44 rivers, and all the 44 rivers are on a certain deathbed because such a water is. When I was a student of architecture, I used to look at it and then wonder what a water state it is. Kerala being a water-rich state at one time. It's a situation where water everywhere. But as the English poet said, what a drop to drink is the Kerala situation now. I'm sure in Punjab, in Haryana, other parts of North India where I work, it's the same situation. Water has become such a scarce commodity. What are we doing as architects? I just read out a figure which will go beyond your comprehensions. 5 billion liters a day. I know this figure will not stick to your brain. 5 followed by so many zeros. When you talk about 500, 5,000, 500,000, 5 crores, 50 crores. Beyond that, you can comprehend that figure. 5 followed with so many zeros. 5 billion liters a day is being used to flush out the dirt from our toilets per day in India, where the situation is water everywhere, not a drop to drink. 5 billion liters of potable water is being used in our toilet to flush out the dirt. Likewise, 32% of the total energy produced in this country is being used in the construction sector. Again, the same percentage of 32% wood harvest in this country. I'm telling you, like a prayer. These are the answers for the climate change. We want to mitigate the negative impact of climate change. Plant more trees. That's the simplest solution. Plant more trees. And we are cutting down, without any unjudicious, we are cutting down trees. 32% of the wood harvest is being used in the construction sector. All these figures actually add up to paint a very grotesque picture before me. I don't want to look at it again. These figures remind us painful figures, deeply engraved into your psyche when you build. I'm building a lot of earth houses. If you Google and find out, I'm basically an earth architect. I build with local materials like earth. I build it with bamboo. I build it with lime. I build it with treated wood. These are the kind of materials that I use for very predominantly validated reasons. I've been talking against the excess use of steel and cement. People think that, especially the younger generation of architects, think that putting glass on the top, having these glossy facades, having steel structures is the way out. No, my dear friends. Why am I talking against steel and cement? It's because of one particular reason. See, we don't have a choice at times. We can't probably match the engineering properties of these materials. There are some materials that can replace cement and steel. I will not dwell at length. Probably I'll get a chance to talk about earth, talk about lime, talk about bamboo at a later stage. But I'll just make two provocative statements and leave it at that. I use bamboo for reinforcement. Bamboo for steel. Instead of steel, I use bamboo to take the tensions. Take the tension. Why? Tensile strength is the same. I'm making a brutal statement. The tensile strength of bamboo is almost the same as tensile strength of the steel that we use for reinforcement. Can you beat that? Now, instead of burn brick, can we use mud as a building material? These are questions which I want to leave open, and because you, especially the student, should explore, find out of this material, validate it, and take it forward. I built multi-storied buildings with, I'm telling you, I built the largest earth building in the world, talking about 600,000 square feet. This institutional building, I'm sure probably it will match the area of your campus there, Guru Nanak Dev Engineering College campus. I don't know what in the area of that campus. But I'm sure this figure must be exceeding that. 600,000 square feet of earth's construction, one big complex built entirely, multi-story buildings, 3-story, 4-story buildings, entirely done without columns, without beams, on mud structure. Now, mud, as I call it, stabilize it will, if you update it a little bit more, having some new engineering knowledge into the production, into the validation process. It's a beautiful material. Why I am talking about cement and steel is because they still follow outdated production processes which are heavily energy.
Shankar sir, you are not audible. Hello, Shankar sir, you are not audible.
Sir, he left, I guess.
Sorry about the interruption and sorry about the interruption. And why I'm talking about cement and steel is just because the reason that both these materials still have old, outdated production processes which eats a lot of energy. Having said that, what are the other materials? He said, search that. I cannot actually guide you. In Kerala, I know the plethora of materials which are local. You see, India has a rich reservoir of building material. In Punjab, I'm sure you will have your own set of building materials which are very good. Look for alternate things, look for alternate technologies which will sustain the world. Now, coming back to the social housing sector, we are always talking about a better urban future. And how do you link the pragmatics of social housing? How I came to that is an interesting story. I'm sure it'll be interesting for the listeners. When I was very young, at the age of 10, 11, I was involved in some social movement. I was actually trying to teach people who are not literate how to read and write. You know, at that age, when I was a school student, I used to go to the fishermen villages to teach them how to read and write. The fisherwoman, for instance, they go out early in the morning, they come back at 7 o'clock. After my school hours, I used to go to their, what you call as a hut, but what I call as a chalet. I used to go to their houses and sit with them, live with them, sleep there in the night. And in the night, I would teach them how to read and write. Why should we need education for these people? Education is always empowerment. But that was the first interface with poverty that I had. I belong to a middle class society. For the first time, I was seeing poverty at that, that close. That they didn't have tomorrow, especially the traditional fishermen, they didn't have tomorrow. Once I got exposed to such Indian realities, I thought whatever I learned should be, whatever knowledge that I get should be able to channelize to these terms. Architecture is a faculty that I took as my learning subject. And from that day onwards, I thought I should really reach out to the dispossessed, the marginalized, people living on the edges, on the margins. We don't see them, but they are out there in numbers. And all my life, I've been trying to reach out to them. Traditional fishermen, tribals, Adivasis, as I call it. Disaster resilience, yes, last 25 years, I worked across the world in disaster resilient technologies and research areas. I've been leading UN missions on disaster rehabilitation, resettlement. But having said all those things, young architects should know the basic dynamics of social housing. It's not about having tailor-made solutions. I mean, people endlessly, government endlessly talk about type plan. Please, you should actually consider each individual as a person with a face and an identity. Each person is different from each other. Their taste can be different. Their ideological distinct can be different. The family sizes can be different. Probably you'll get a chance to build a small house for a dancer, a lonely person, a dreamer. I'm sure sometime in your life you get a chance to do that. You should see them as persons with identities, and you cannot have type designs for 1,000 people. You cannot have that. So reach out to them. Have signature homes. That is what we call people. Signature homes for each one of them. Can we do that? Can we provide small houses, beautiful houses with a lot of ventilation and light? Ventilation and light, very critical. Bring in as much of light and ventilation as possible to this house. That will bring in light to their lives. With small spaces, can we design multifunctional spaces? In the daytime, it can be used as a seat. Nighttime, it can be used as a bed. Below that, you can use it as a storage area. Things like that, built-in furniture, beautiful room. Who said you have to design square or monotonous rectangles? It can be a round building. I still remember one of the smallest houses that I built for 300 square feet for a journalist friend of mine. He gave me one line of design brief. He said, Shankar, much earlier in my life, probably 25 years back, he told me that he wants all his physical assets were his books. He wanted to have a small place by the time he had a child, small place where he breathe, inhale the fragrance of the letters. I had a small library. And around that, I built a small house, 300 square feet. which I built for 10,000 rupees those days. Can we make meaningful expressions in architecture? When I say social housing, the image that comes to you is very, very disappointing. You think about endless lines of monotonous rectangular monstrosities. That is not the way social housing should be made. And if you have the Google accessibility, look at one string of buildings that Laurie Baker built, Kadimadam Colony. They had a beautiful concept. They had very small houses, but they all had a room to grow. They all had all these flats, you know, 3-story building, each flat had a little terrace, which probably could be converted as a room later. House that grows is the basic principle on which you should design, especially social housing. You should give them a dream. They will build themselves. When I say a dream, this is what Laurie Baker had been always telling him. You know, a house that grows. Incremental housing is a concept that I don't know whether you are being taught about incremental housing. Incremental housing is one concept that India needs. That talks about economic independence. It talks about economic opportunities. It talks about leaving a dream with a poor person. If you want to expand 300 square feet, 400 square feet, 500 square feet, is not enough for a normal family with 2 children. They like to expand it somehow. They will expand it the way they want. Just leave the option to them. Leave a space. Don't have closed options for the poor people. Leave them the opportunity. Tell them, educate them on why local materials and local technologies and local capabilities and local employment opportunities very critical for the growth of housing sector in India. Architects have a huge role of educators. You can't do that. If you can't, technology is something that I think is not very relevant at this point of time when you're talking about housing for all. We need numbers. When I say we need numbers, we need meaningful expression. Our challenge, the whole challenge before is have meaningful, sustainable habitats. Sustainable is a thing that cannot be wished away now. Sustainable within small money. Can we make it very cost efficient? By making it cost efficient, don't compromise on energy efficiency. When you bring in light and air, you're talking about energy efficiency. When you are talking about local capabilities, we are talking about empowering people, we are talking about economic independence. All these things should be brought together on a platter to help people to go forward. Let me reiterate my words. Habitat literacy is a critical thing that goes beyond this thing. It looks at soil management, it looks at environmental management, it looks at man management, personal management, the rest of it. It's very critical for a country like India, especially in pandemic times. You know, in Kerala, we used to source a lot of material from the Western world, and especially from the other part of India, North India, for instance. We used to get a lot of granite, marble pieces. Granite, which used to be our flooring option, the rich and the lake for a long time. That's gone now. That transportation is gone now. You cannot source the material from such a long distance due to reasons pertaining to this stressful condition now. I feel very happy about one thing. These pandemic times have brought focus on local architecture. It has brought a very clear focus on regional requirements. It has also brought a very focus on a complete ban on opulent, flamboyant building. You know, small spaces. People tell me that they are beginning to enjoy the small spaces. A small space which can be cleaned, which can be, you know, sanitized and cleaned for minutes. A small window that will let in a lot of fresh air. Don't look at air conditioning anymore. I know Punjab has harsh winters and harsh summers. You should, you know, discover traditional ways of controlling the ventilation and controlling the heat. Which are them? They're out there. You look at the traditional idioms of architecture, you'll find a lot of things. You know, I had a huge opportunity to work in a place near you, near your state. I was called in when, you know, the floods in Uttarakhand happened. Floods in Uttarakhand happened. I was called in by the chief minister. I flew in, and Chief Minister Vijay Bahuguna at that time conveniently, I was not very familiar. I went to Dehradun. I teach Dehradun Institute of Technology at times. I go and visit some of the buildings there. But I'm not really familiar with the terrain there. When this flood happened, I was taken in. I was shown around the place. Next day, I was put before a huge battery of journalists. The Chief Minister introduced me as a person who is going to give answers. I was actually perplexed. EDC correspondent asked me, what is your one-liner solution for resettlement or rehabilitation? 1 minute I was stunned. One-liner rehabilitation strategy. I said, look, Uttarakhand is a holy land. You have to tread on it softly. Then the correspondent, why should you say that you have to tread on it softly? I said, it's Himalayan geology. It's Himalayan geology. The soil structure is very fragile. And when you build on such a terrain, you have to build responsibly. Let me say this to the students of architecture. Latest manipulation in social housing is happening in land management. Poor people are always given lands which are not really suitable for habitation. It doesn't have the infrastructure, water, etc., etc. How to make that land usable is a question that you will well probably remember Frank Lloyd Wright. At least at this point of time, when you're talking about superall, remember Frank Lloyd Wright's quotation, who said, father of what I call organic architecture, who said that buildings should not be built on a mountain. Buildings should be of a mountain. We have so many examples around the world, Frank Lloyd's art, the rest of them, whose buildings actually belong to the site. Punjab is a land of small hills and plains are there. Wherever your hills, don't bother to flatten it. Land is God given. How to make judicious use of the land is a critical question for the architect in the future to answer. I have done few thousand, 10,000 social housing units. And I'll just wind up this session by sharing a personal story of mine, where in Sri Lanka, here I got 2011 was the year when I got Padma Shri from Government of India. In January, the days when this award was announced in India, I was actually traveling in Sri Lanka looking at a lot of things. That is a war-ravaged country. And the tsunami came in 2000, destroyed one part of it. Again, civil war destroyed the rest of it. I was touring the northeastern and northwestern province of Sri Lanka. I actually built 50,000 houses for the Government of India. Government, as a part of Government of India, continues to house 30,000 people, 50,000 families, the Tamil families. That is the offer that earlier Prime Minister Manmohan Singh gave to the Sri Lankan population. Wherever I was going, I was seeing ease of withering. I was not seeing any happy communities at all. One day, I was asked to do the community. They called it Mundotam. Mundotam means, in my language, Malayalam, and in Tamil. I don't know how do you take it in your language. Mundotam in our language means a veritable garden, a flower garden. That is what Mundotam means. For the first time, I thought I was going to see a happy community. Mundotam means a lot of flowers. When I went into the community, I saw a shack, a big shack with 15,000 families to live, rehabilitated. Building that will have proper toilet facility. Building that will give them proper cover, shelter cover. I went in and they thought I was the person. They can't, poor illiterate Tamil population, they didn't understand what the government did. So they came to me in numbers and looked at me. They thought I was the person, manifestation of God, going to give them houses. They came in numbers. Whenever I talk to marginalized people, poor people, I don't sit up on a stage and talk with them. I hold their hands. So this is the exercise that I was doing in Sri Lanka. They came, it was raining, but they still came in numbers. They sat on the floor. I also sat on the floor. I held their hands, wanted to have a conversation with them. I mean, talking about the cultural needs. And unless you know the cultural needs, unless they know about lifestyle practices, how can you design houses for these poor people? I started talking. Suddenly the military came. They came in numbers and they said, asked me to leave. I said, no, I can't leave because I have the immunity of an Indian diplomat. I belong, Indian government sent him there and I have the diplomatic immunity. No, they said, don't talk to these wretched people. You talk to the government. You are here on a government mission and why should you talk to these wretched people? I said, I'm a people's architect. Unless I talk to them, hold their hands, I'm going to build houses for them that would reflect their cultural needs and their lifestyle. And this population is completely new to me, strange to me. So I want to talk to them, know about it. I couldn't speak the language. The military came in guns and things like that. Yeah. The crowd was also asked to be people with gun-throating, people who have the courage to sort of part them. I just got up. And I got up, young, very young girl. Probably, my granddaughter's age, very young girl, 4 years, 5 years, Tamil girl. Tamil is the language that is spoken in Northeastern and Northeastern province of Sri Lanka. She came to me with plaited hair and I don't know whether North India has seen such things with ribbons on. Look at all Tamil girls pictures in Google, you'll see them. Skirts and pavada, we call it. With plaited this thing. She came to me and held my long distance. He asked me. She gave me a bit of jasmine garland. It was torn away from some puja's face, a jasmine garland. She said, Mama, mom and mami kodukko means whether I would be able to give this garland to my wife. I was stuck for a minute. I knew that she wanted to tell me something. I prompted her to tell me what she really wanted. I knew this was a kind of jasmine garland. A bit of jasmine garland was kind of bright to me. I was asking this little girl, what does she want? She told me, told me in Tamil. I can understand only part Tamil, so I had a translator with me. He told me she was asking for a very safe and secure place for her dolls. She had a few dolls, bombagal they call it in Tamil, doll pieces, probably gifted by her relatives, parents, I don't know. She wanted a safe and secure place. Her friends should come and take them away. She wanted a safe place for people. She asked me, as an architect, hello, as an architect, can you give me a safe and secure place for keeping my dolls? You look at that little girl. Her concept of house was a safe and secure place for keeping her dolls. There are millions of them in this country. They actually belong to the sector, social housing. Before I could answer her, she was dragged away by the policeman and the military person. I couldn't have the courage to back. She is my, granddaughter's age, and I couldn't respond to her needs. She wanted to give me this garland because I could remember that particular instance as a part of, the rest of it. What I want to tell you is that personal experience of working across India, working across the world, have given me a new meaning, a new paradigm, understanding what social housing is all about. I feel it as a privilege. I mean, let me take it that way. It may not give you the kind of money that you hope for, that you try to make as an architect. But it will give you immense pleasure. It will give you immense satisfaction that you're holding hands with people who doesn't have choices. They also need architects. Let this be the message that Habitat Day conveys to you. Hold hands with them. Remember these figures. They are out there on the street looking for interventions from you people, architects who are come out of this college. Once again, let me thank the organizers for giving me this wonderful, wonderful opportunity to, reach out to you. It was a great pleasure for me to hold hands with you. I take class in the other university, lovely university in Punjab. This is the first time I'm getting interface with your college. I was looking at the website to know about the credentials. I'm very happy and amazed at the performance of some of your alumni and people like that. I was making some discrete inquiries about your organization and the institution. I got very positive response from all of them. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity given, especially the principal, Sri Vivek Sehgal, who facilitated this particular interaction. Thank you, my dear faculty members. Thank you, listeners, participants. Eminent panelists are there, raring to go after me. I'm sure these discussions will lead you to further conversation. End of the seminar should be to kind of, I won't use the brutal word enlightenment, but if the observation can lead you to a journey, that will be the takeaway. World Habitat Day, World Architecture Day, as we celebrate, as we observe the day, this will be a big takeaway. If I have led you to a small journey within 20-25 minutes, I'm extremely thankful for the opportunity given. Thank you all for your kind attention. As I put in the chat box, I need to leave probably at, I don't know what the time is, 2:50. I need to leave. Thank you very much for the
Thank you, sir.
faculty members out there. Let me also tell you that anything related to sustainable housing, anything related to sustainable architecture, anything related to earth architecture, anything related to people-centered architecture, anything related to value-based architecture, I am always there for you, and I'll be only happy to join hands with you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your formidable thoughts. Thank you so much. Moving further, I feel privileged to have Dr. SARBESBAR PRAHARAJ, an assistant research professor at the Knowledge Exchange for Real Science, School of Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning at Arizona State University, USA. Dr. Praharaj engages in research for KER in the areas of city analytics, data visualization, and resilience dashboards and community-facing data exchange solutions. Prior to joining ASU, he was a postdoctoral researcher and manager of the City Analytics Lab at the Faculty of Built Environment, UNSW, Sydney, Australia. While at UNSW, he was involved in the development of Australia's groundbreaking data-driven property valuation tool, RAISE, RAISE, and authored the Strathfield Smart City Roadmap for the Sydney Council. Dr. Praharaj established and coordinated the Australia-India Smart Cities Knowledge Exchange Network and was designated as a Global Tech Fellow for spearheading research collaboration with the member institutions of Global Alliance of Technological Universities. He also facilitated the setting up of Pune Smart City Living Lab through a tri-university partnership between Arizona State University, King's College London, and University of New South Wales, Sydney, as part of the PLUS Alliance Network. He has received competitive grant functioning from the Australia-India Council and Australia Cora Foundation and was awarded the UNSW International Postgraduate Research Scholarship for his PhD. Dr. Praharaj has consulted for clients such as the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Cities Alliance, the Global Land and Tool Network, and Government of India while his tenure as the project manager at CEPT University Research and Development Foundation in India. He received his PhD in Smart Cities from UNSW Sydney and holds 2 master degrees in Urban Planning and Geography from CEPT Ahmedabad, India. Sir, we'll talk about leveraging big data and geodesign tools for shaping future housing and infrastructure policies. Please, sir.
Hello and good afternoon. It gives me immense pleasure to interact with students and faculties as well as other academicians probably who has joined through this room on this auspicious World Architecture Day and the UN World Habitat Day. I heartily congratulate all of you. It's an amazing day, and it's a day for celebration. Not just looking at the challenges, but the opportunities as well, what lies ahead. And I thank Mr. Vivek Sehgal, your head of the Department of Architecture, who has invited me to this meeting. And I also thank Mr. Singh, the principal, for welcoming us so nicely. And of course, this extended introduction that I just heard. If I may share my screen with all of you to show you some of the slides. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can.
Great. Let me see if I can. What is this line? It's very strange. Vivek, sir, is there any idea what this?
I think this somebody might have done this unintentionally. This is not in your PPT.
Oh, okay. I'll probably share the screen again. Can you all see my screen now?
No, sir, not yet.
Okay. I hope all can see now.
Yes, sir, visible.
Okay, as it's been already introduced that I will be talking about geodesign and the role of big data in shaping the future housing and infrastructure policies. And I don't need to introduce myself, I guess, because there has been already an extended introduction that I just heard. And I basically work with the Arizona State University in the state of Arizona in the United States within the Faculty of Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning, also architecture. It's in the same school. So can everybody see the change slide?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm just checking because sometimes it's just the technology, you know. So, whoops, I can see these. I don't know why I see these. Should I admit or I don't know. Okay, so before beginning this presentation, I must say what is my research looks at. My research looks at studying, designing, and testing various analytical methods, tools, and platforms. Vivek sir, can you ensure this pop-up is not coming up? It just stops. I don't know why I'm seeing this message. Vivek sir,
Yes, sir.
Can you ensure this is removed? I can see some message popping up in my screen that some people have entered the waiting room. Please admit, see waiting room. I am seeing this.
Yeah, okay. I'll do it.
Okay. So, sorry for the interruption time and again. So my research looks at new methods, tools, and platforms to harness intelligence from big data. Well, big data may be a keyword, big jargon to many of you, but I'll try and decipher this terminology. So basically, big data to enable better urban planning and design solutions. And my research and all the work that I have did over the last decade looks at these kind of keywords, looking at GIS, data, smart cities, and technologies and urban informatics and all of that, looking into interface with urban design and planning. So when I talked about big data, you might have just got a sense of data, but how it is big or small, I'll just show you a small example here. This was one of the projects that I did in Sydney a couple of years ago, looking at mobility in the city of Sydney. And if I just play this slide, you can see here some dots appearing on your screen. Is the visualization visible to all? Can you all see the visualization on your screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is basically mapping the bicycle data. We all have smartphones these days, and you use a smartphone and you have a mobility app. So for example, your Ola or Uber, and whenever you tap book a trip, your location is geocoded and geolocated. So we can get access to the data and actually map it out, that who is moving where and at what time. And this is bicycles running. So this is early morning now. You can see very few bicyclists roaming around the Sydney city. And yeah, that's the time when the work trip beginning in the morning, and then afternoon, it just dies down a little bit. In the evening, here again, it will pick up a little bit. Here you can see, and then towards later in the night, it just again fades away. So you can clearly see how data from apps and such with such innovative technologies can be retrieved, obtained, cleaned, and we can work with this data to visualize how our cities are functioning and how people are moving from work to home and home to work, or home to other places such as recreation or retail. And I also mapped out these. This slide, for example, looks at depth the bicyclists in the city of Sydney based on gender. You can see here clearly the reds showing female bicyclists and the blue lines indicate males. And you can clearly see the pattern, right? The females travel much less on the bicycle in comparison to the males. So you can see they travel a lot far. And also interesting is that there are some places which are preferred for women bicyclists, and then some places and areas where female bicyclists don't like to go. And so that's how, we're looking at big data and trying to interpret our cities, trying to understand the cities in finer scales and details to be able to make better decisions about our future infrastructure. I also worked on a very interesting project with Transport for New South Wales there in Australia, getting access to data from smart cards. So, you travel to Delhi, most of these places, you will have a ticket that's been issued in metros, and also some cities under the Smart Cities mission, they're coming up with travel cards, right? Whenever you tap on those travel cards on a bus or a train, your location is taken for, and I have a coordinate of X and Y, which I can map over the space, right? I know where you probably board a train and where somebody has left off the train and which route they take generally. And so we got that kind of data from Smart Card, which is called Opal Card in New South Wales. And you can see this map really tries to understand the housing and economy nexus, because housing is not in isolation. As Mr. Shankar was explaining, housing is not just a house. We need to understand the city, which is much complex. To be solving a housing crisis or a problem, we need to look at other dynamics as well. And so this is looking at a more high level design solution, design problem, I guess. So this is, I mapped out the 30-minute radius travels. So whoever has traveled to this particular location, which is Parramatta, and these are the other business districts. I'm sure in Ludhiana also you have many business districts where there are major jobs concentrated. And I can see, you can see the more width of this line, the more people are traveling on those routes. And the thinner are the lines, then that depicts lesser people are traveling. And you can clearly see which directions people travel more and they cover more distance. And this is 30-minute city. And you can clearly see there are about 55% who travel within, 30 minutes, and then about 8% traveling more than an hour. So that's quite interesting. And also this is like 1 hour trips. And we know which suburbs and which areas people travel 1 hour. So that's a lot of time spent. In developed countries like US, where I worked for a university and I worked previously in USW, developed countries, 1 hour of travel is a lot. And that travel and time is money, And the objective is to minimize travel distance as far as possible, integrate the housing and workplaces as far as possible. And we can see this analysis, some of the suburbs or locations like, these are suburbs in outside of India, and these are like wards in Ludhiana, different wards like this, the Black Town. So for example, you call them ward number 1, ward number 2, first, like that. But you can see some of the suburbs where there are high percentage of people traveling within 30 minutes. Some of them are much lesser. You can see here, Sydney Olympic Park, only about 25% or 1/4 is traveling less than 30 minutes. And a lot of people are traveling more than 60 minutes. And so we know which suburbs or which wards to focus for future integrated land use development. And what I always used to do, and I do in the work settings, is that we develop these tools. I work with these tools and build these tools, but then at the end of the day, we have to work with the communities and the policymakers in the government. And so we bring them into the city analytics lab, which I used to manage in UNSW. And you can see these are the sort of map boards built by Microsoft for us. And we sort of bring these practitioners and test these tools in real life settings and take their feedback. You can see through these presentations to the CEOs and other policymakers, we then devise with the government. This is the latest plan that came out for Sydney, a metropolis for 3 cities. Based on that bicycle data, based on that the 30-minute city diagrams that I saw, this is sort of overall the Sydney city is now being divided into 3 cities, and the business district can be covered by 30 minutes. And the ways the bus systems, the transport, the metros or the light rails are being designed to facilitate that people do not spend more than half an hour to access a job. And that's called integrated land and housing development. And so I'm sure in India, 30-minute city is a far-fetched dream, but we can obviously talk about 1 hour cities, even if we can make 1 hour cities and do that integration, that's going to be fantastic. But then that's what the value of big data these days, that we need to understand data, where they come from and how to deal with this data to decipher this complex mechanism that cities are. Probably I can skip this. Vivek sir, how much time do I have after from now? Then I'll probably, because there are, Lovelesh Sharma is also presenting after this. How much time I have from now?
You can have another 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Then I'll skip this one. This is one of the projects that I did for India, looking at a lot of parameters of housing infrastructure and comparing those cities on a dynamic platform. And of course, comparing that across cities. So I'll probably skip that. Consciousness of time. Moving to this, another tool that I built, which is very interesting on housing and property, looking at how do we capture land value when we propose some housing redevelopments. We always do housing redevelopments in our cities. We have slums and underutilized land parcels which needs to be upgraded, where there are high rises or maybe more denser low-income housings are being built. But then governments do come and invest in these places, but how do they capture some of that value back? That is quite important. if the governments can't get the money back, they won't be investing much in infrastructure. And that's a vicious cycle. And this platform that I built, which is RISE, which is called Rapid Analytics Interactive Scenario Explorer, built around a number of data sets. So at the first level, we mapped all the property parcels in the city of Sydney. This is about 600,000, called 6 lakhs property parcels in Sydney. And we have the records of the land value, which we got from the Valuer Generals. Here you got the revenue departments, which have these data sets. So that's been mapped all across the city. And then of course we got the land use zoning, which most of the cities in India also have, which have a master plan. And we also digitized the FSR across the city, looking at the floor space ratios, and also of course the building heights, which is mostly there in the master plans and the zonal development plans. And not just we look at what is existing in terms of the FSR and all other land characteristics, we also look at the control parameters, such as the flood prone areas or bushfires, and also low income neighborhoods. And that has also a direct impact on valuation of property. How the property is valued also depends on these factors. If a place often gets submerged in the floods, people won't give a high price for those properties, right? And all of that brought together to do this analytics that we did with the logistic regression to compute each parcel's, what are the impacts, how each parcel's value is determined. And that is determined based on a number of metrics you can see. So for example, we found if a parcel is 100 meters closer to the coastline or the beach, their property value goes up $836. But if a property parcel is closer to the transmission line, electric grid, then the price goes down, or an industrial zone because of the pollution or probably the noise, prices goes down. So we have a detailed understanding of each property's dynamics on how the valuation could be done. And we use that intelligence to compute how the value could increase from future infrastructure. So for example, if I propose a new train station or a metro station, you can see how it will impact the property prices in terms of percent uplift, how many properties, and of course, what is the total value uplift. You can see here, you can run these scenarios and compute multiple train stations or bus stations. And that can be used for new parks, building new education, health infrastructure, how that kind of infrastructure impacts property prices. Very, very interesting. And that's a lot important, I guess, for future housing planning and infrastructure planning. And of course, it has a 3D. And also this RISE, we built a new tool within that looks at rezoning opportunities. So for example, we have a particular location in a city which is not properly utilized in terms of land and potential. We want to increase the FSR, we want to increase the heights of the building through rezoning. But then, what impact does it have on property price increase? The government need to know much before so that there is no speculation and all the profits doesn't go to the builders. There's some profit which is taken back by the government for further infrastructure investment. So for that, we used a lot of tools. I worked with a lot of community groups and governments and developers to know what parameters they use for valuation. And then we've driven this tool where you can select one parcel or multiple parcel through just drawing a buffer on the tool. And then it rapidly gives you, what is the existing FSR and existing potential. And on the top of that, what new additions to value of that property can come through this rezoning. And that value obviously shown for each plots and also for a particular zone or at a larger scale of the city. So this has tremendous potential for future housing planning. We can't just talk about affordable housing, low income housing. The government may not have enough money really to invest unless they take back some of the money that comes from new infrastructure or new rezoning. And that's, I think, we most of the time blame the governments, but do we as an academician or practitioners have access to such tools that enables us to better plan, foresee future, and then use that some of the money to invest further in it. So that's a cycle from a bad to good cycle probably. And of course, we published this toolkit. This is available online, and you can obviously go and see what it is and how it works, and that has been tested across places. Lastly, my last presentation slides would focus on geodesign, because you can see the topic looks at big data and geodesign. Probably up till now, I talked about big data, how those data sets can actually bring value to your housing or infrastructure strategy. But I would also like to talk about geodesign. Now, what is geodesign, and how is it important for architects or planners or property development guys? So geodesign is basically built in Harvard Graduate School of Design by Carl Steins at the Harvard School. So that was built in 2010 with an aim to introduce collaborative design making processes. So what we have in Indian cities, or many of the cities across the world where I've worked in several countries now, we have a peculiar problem of multiple planning paradigm, right? For example, in Ludhiana, you must have a master plan. You will also see you have a zonal plan. You might not have seen it, but if you go to your planning department, you will find it. The city, most of these Indian cities also have a city development plan, right? They were prepared under the GNDEC 2010, 12, that time. And also we had city sanitation plan. Now we also have a smart city plan. And some of the cities also have an environmental management plan, which is often built by the UN agencies or some other foreign aids. You know, and of course, some cities have heritage management plans, cities like Delhi or Ahmedabad, which have rich heritage history. So what is happening is that we have multiple plans, but there is a missing link. None of the plans talk to each other. They're not integrated. And they just, it's just reinventing of wheel in each of these plans. And so how do we converge these plans? How do we bring synergy across these different institutions which implements these plans? And that's where geodesign comes to play. I'll show you quickly an exercise. Now this tool is built by one of my very good friends based at the University College Dublin. His name is Hrishikesh Balal. You can find him up. So I always use this platform for doing these exercises, this geodesign hub. And so I'll show quickly an exercise that we did. So this is the location that we applied this. This can be applied to Ludhiana or any other cities, for example. I recently did one of the exercises for in Kolkata. So this is the city selection, the area selection we did. And then, you know, you can see in that area, there are 3 different jurisdictions, like the wards or municipal corporations. There is City of Sydney, there is Botany Bay and Randwick. And these are the sort of features of that particular place. There are some majestic beach. And of course there is the airport and the port, Botany, and then we have, of course, the universities, health precincts as well. So these are the sort of development opportunities. And how geodesign works is that I sort of invited about 40 people from different agencies. So you can see here, these are the water supply department, these are transport department, these are from municipal corporations. And so all these different agencies were brought together, packed up in one house over a day of workshop. And what we invite them to do first is that we invite them to draw their proposals. He or she may be from transport department, water supply department, they might have different plans, but how do we bring all these proposals into one place? That's what geodesign does. So this is a platform where you can draw your own projects. So you can see the parks department, they've drawn these projects. The water supply department, they've drawn this. So this is green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, tourism, and so on. So you can see a variety of projects in one place. And then we can all bring together those proposals, which are much complex to do, but with this rapid tool that we have built, my friend Hrishikesh has built, now we can see all the proposals, and also we can sequence those proposals. So for example, if I say for the next 20 years, we have many projects, how do we phase those projects in different times, and of course allocate funds? And you can see in real time this works. You can see we can slide through, we can visualize, and that's a live document, dynamic, we can interact with that. And that can be used for live implementation of projects. And this is like an amazing tool. This is being used now across UK, USA, and many places. This is being used. So I'll quickly move on as well, because I don't have much of time. So this can be used, the geodesign tools and such tools like the RAISE tool that I have shown can be used significantly in the urban renewal processes, so that we can reduce travel distances. I have shown the 30-minute cities, and these geodesign tools, and all, you know, accessible public transport is the key. We can't think about housing in isolation, okay? And also, of course, that helps us better utilization of existing infrastructure, and of course, value uplifting potential can be unlocked. So you can see, this is probably where most of Indian cities are. You know, we have such dense housing, and how do we move towards more cleaner, greener, and leaner urban developments? And you can see through the geodesign process, we came out to different phasings, you know, in terms of parks, and then lots which can be done for urban renewal, and then some of the parkings, and so many kinds of new infrastructure can be added in sequencing, you know. And of course, we need to sort of move from this kind of development, which is often we see in Indian cities, towards more of, you know, geo-design, collaborative processes, where you can see all of these things are brought together. I don't know why these lines are cropping up, but well, it looks interesting, the design. So yeah, and then of course we did this modeling to show how past investment had happened and the future of housing development, which corridors should new houses being built, where to put infrastructure, and all of that geodesign enables us to not just look at 2D, 3Ds, and whatnot. You know. Yeah, we can see how the new investments are being planned. And of course, I'm teaching the geodesign and urban planning course now. This is fall in US, and I have been in charge of this geodesign course at ASU. I'm happy to collaborate with you guys as well to see if we can do some kind of exercise and geodesign activities that's at a higher level. Of course, we can engage students and practitioners to do such case studies. That will be really interesting as well in the context of Ludhiana or any other Punjab cities. And so, yeah, that's the kind of overall summary, I guess. I look at data-driven approaches. I always say that without data, we can't plan better cities. We can't have better housing strategies. We need to be data-driven. And also, we also need to look at environmental performance. By doing those 30-minute or 1-hour cities, by cutting down travel time, by looking at more faster access to jobs and other amenities, we must improve our environmental performance. And of course, that also gives the development transparency. Things like the RAISE tool that I've shown, or geodesign, which is very, very collaborative and also transparent as well. We often don't know how the cities are planned, how the designs are made, probably in some of the consultants' offices. That needs to go, and we need to be more collaborative and in the process, and has to be transparent. And so that's pretty much it. And these are the sort of publications that this presentation is built on. So these are the papers that up till now that has come from me this year, and this was the last year publications. These are all open online. Anybody, please reach out to me if you want to read more about these papers. And I'm obviously always available. My profile is visible on this website, and of course, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can always reach me through this email for any kind of questions you have. Thank you for this opportunity again. Sorry if I have gone over time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was undeniably a very knowledgeable presentation. Thanks a lot. Moving to our last but not the least phase today, we'll be grateful to listen to esteemed architect LOVLESH Sharma, Sector Lead Infrastructure, Master Plan Delhi 2041, National Institute of Urban Affairs, New Delhi, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. Prior to joining NIUA, architect LOVLESH worked as an assistant professor and deputy HOD for Urban Planning Program at Amity University, Dubai, UAE, and Noida, India. He was worked for Center for Research and Development Consultancy at CEPT Ahmedabad, India, where he had worked upon various master plan projects, including Hyderabad Master Plan for Hyderabad Municipal Development Authority, India, and Reliance SCZ, Jhajjar, Haryana, India, Gujarat Industrial Development Authority, Industrial Area Master Plan, Gandhinagar, India. He has also worked with Center for Public Policy, CPP, at Indian Institute of Management, IIM, Bangalore, India, for Water Security Assessment Project for Bangalore City with Bangalore Water Supply and Sanitation Board, BWSSB. He holds his architecture degree from Government College of Architecture, Lucknow, India, and a postgraduate degree, Masters of Planning Infrastructure from CEPT University, Ahmedabad, India. He is also a writer. His first book of poetry compilation has been recently published and released and appreciated, while the next novel is in print. Sir will be sharing his thoughts regarding current issues in housing sector for cities and infrastructure support required for future demand. Please, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so very much. It's a so informative session. Like, meanwhile, when I was preparing for my presentation. I was learning fast from the previous two speakers. First of all, thank you so very much, GNDEC, Dr. Singh, Mr. Vivek Sehgal, for the invitation, for such a beautiful introduction. And from NIOS side, from Ministry of Housing, Urban Affairs side, I wish all of you, all the teachers, faculties, and all my peer colleagues and friends were very, very, very happy World Habitat Architects Day and UN Habitat Day. It's really an important day as far as this fraternity of architects, planners, geographers, both in academia and practice concern. And this is how we plan to shape the earth and the lives together. So that's why it becomes quite significant in its own terms. Yeah, so as my previous speakers, Dr. Shankar also in depth made us learn that how the core architecture, sustainable architecture, can make a difference. And my friend Sarveshwar, the way you have explained the importance of the IT and design, and how multiple plans, when they don't talk to each other, it was not a proper foolproof planning. Once they started talking in terms of geodesign, yeah, it can make miracles. And I think India will adopt such techniques. So far we're still struggling with poverty and unemployment. And as you mentioned, rightly mentioned, the kind of old planning thoughts and the old planning schools of creating LID EWS housing. But still, time will come when India will switch to such tools for sure. So once the architecture discussion is done in depth and the importance of the ITs done, so this stage is all set. And I'm here I would like to take the discussion back to the physical planning core arguments. And as I'm involved in the master plan Delhi 2041 for the capital city of India, I will also share the lack of housing. As we understand the lack of housing, I need to get these rights to share the screen. Vivek sir, if you can quickly give me rights so that I can share my screen.
Yes, sir. No, you can now share your screen, sir.
Great, thank you so much, sir. So yeah, so as I was mentioning, see, a lack of proper housing, as Shankar sir already mentioned, 17 million people staying in proper housing. What does it mean? I mean, how does it make any difference? So primarily, we understand if the housing is not good enough, if the housing condition and services are not adequate, it may hamper the mental and physical health. But right now, in the current discussion, what I will also try to emphasize upon, how improper housing system, improper planning system can ruin the whole city's life together. Taking some cases from Delhi's experience, I'm working on currently, and our visits to different sort of cities of similar nature. So this is how I'll try to explain the correlation.
मैडम फोन करो नीचे जल्दी, लाइट चली गई है. हेलो मैडम, फोन करो नीचे, लाइट चली गई है.
The housing inventory. But to the other extent, yes, that housing inventory also going into the wrong direction. Why? Because most of the investment and most of the areas getting developed for habitable spaces are meant to be sold. And there we get defeated in our first step. I'll come to the point where we can further understand how does it make a difference. So total housing demand, if we see the left side, three circles, colorful circles, as far as the housing inventory developed in India, when the demand is 24% for the affordable housing, when the demand is 37%, we are just creating only 24%. So this 13% shortage of affordable housing every year. So that is getting accumulated. On contrary, mid-income MIG housing, we have the demand of just 30%, and then we are over providing. And coming to the last section, it's more problematic, because the demand is just 33%. And what kind of inventory we are generating for HIG and luxury housing, it's beyond. And as an overall housing demand in country, what we see, as architect Shankar also mentioned, a housing shortage doesn't mean people don't have a house. Housing shortage the major portion of the housing shortage is 80% sort of houses which are not good for or not fit for habitation. So these houses are to be either rebuilt or to be improved with in situ as such, or retrofitted for making them habitable. So this is the first wrong attempt. What sort of housing inventory we are getting produced every year. And once that housing inventory is created, this is another issue which makes this particular whole argument visible in terms of the wrong direction. So once you see vacant housing inventory in India across the metro cities, 25-26% of the housing inventory already built, available to be sold, is vacant. Pune 21%, Greater Mumbai 15-30%, NCR it has almost 1.8 lakh unsold flats in whole NCR, almost 2 lakhs houses. And yes, inventory is getting increased every year, the way I mentioned in the previous slide. And overall, across these states, Mumbai has almost 20% vacant houses built for sale, and nobody's buying them. What does it mean? People are not either interested to buy them, or they are not able to buy them. In both the cases, this much of inventory remains unsold. So the investment, the land infrastructure, and all other sort of infrastructure are going in vain, because people are not shifting to these housing units. Yet we are creating them every year with the pace, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So where we are going wrong? So this we have already discussed. 1.6 billion people are not having adequate housing, and 18 million in India. What direction we are not able to cope up with? We could not move in the secondary direction in spite of making houses to be sold. Are the working woman hostel and the senior living old age home hostel. Most of the time, people shift to a city for work purpose for a limited period, or for the academia, or for the education, or for an intermediate engagement. It's not for long. They don't want to buy a house, and it's quite significant population which comes under this category: education, temporary work shift, and other means. So these people will not buy the house, and what happens? They end up staying in the unauthorized rental houses, which have no control from the administration, and nobody is actually tapping into the kind of rents being asked for, kind of lease agreements are being made. So that creates another set of nuisance for the society. One more category out of this working and senior old age homes, one more category which we are lagging behind, and we recently witnessed, is the labor housing. And almost 140 million migrants are there in country, and 80%, 80 to 85% of these migrants are labor migrants. So they shift for work from one state to another, and this shift is quite frequent, quite often. And this section of the society is least considered when we plan for creating new inventory for housing. What does it mean? So this is nobody, they are nobody, but they are part of that 130 million, 130 crore population of India. If you count any sort of a population in the state, we take 3, 4, 5% floating population. They are part of that. So it's part of the city population, state population, and country's population. So when we say shortage of the housing inventory, this particular section is also waiting to get a proper housing in a particular city or a state. Just to mention again, they will not buy a house, whatever is smaller, cheaper house they will get in a city, because their work will shift after 2 years, 1 year, or 5 years. once the construction site will be done with their requirement, they have to shift to another state. So that housing stock has to be available in the next work location, and then we come back to the understanding of the housing inventory which is not to be sold. These are the impacts: improper sanitation, improper housing. Look at the lower left side image of Purani Delhi, is Paharganj, and you know that this causes the fire. 50% of these 95,000 cases happened in Delhi are due to short circuiting, and that too in such congested areas of old Delhi. Then comes out the importance of how we can provide habitable spaces. Is it good to create inventories? Is it good to create HIG, LIG, and then small portion of the whole inventory as EWS housing? So how does it going to help us? So talking in terms of the rental housing demand, this is one of the analysis done by Magic Bricks, one of the real estate companies, mediators in India. And the rental housing demand is on the right side. Half of the demand falls under this 7,000 to 15,000, 13,000 category. So 7,000 housing unit can be one plumber can afford. I mean, you know, city of Delhi, if we talk about, and a good person, well-to-do family can afford 15 to 20,000 housing for rent, irrespective of their tenure to stay in the particular city. And this much demand is actually existing in the real estate market, but yet because this part is quite ignored in terms of the inappropriate policy interventions and for rental housing. So it's this rental housing system not being officially taken by the Ministry of Housing. Of late, they have triggered it. National house rental policy has been formulated, but yes, the stock development, the inventory development for the housing for the country is yet followed in the built and sold format, and that built and sold format is not working. Then we got to know some numbers, and hence people are not staying in the habitable spaces. That means we need to tweak our direction of building new housing stock. These are a couple of examples. Berlin, 87% of their total housing stock, you know, 87% is huge, is rental housing. So it is the housing built by government, built by PPP model, and that is purely for rental purpose. It has a policy in backing, and it has a proper system of getting you shifted from a city to another city. So once you shift from rental housing given by government to another city, you will get a priority, you will get a space of similar site on size and type. NYC. So they have 89% of the total housing or rental housing. So they have actually adopted this. They have learned it very, very quickly. And we are no different, because laborers will migrate, middle class, middle age people will migrate, and they will not buy properties every time they shift from one city to one state to, or one country to another, you know. So rental housing is the need of the hour. Colombia, Bogota, 91%. Like if you go to the sort of developing countries, Bogota is fantastic as an example, and these are supported by their robust rental control acts, policies, tenants acts, and scope of commercial conflict, addressing them as a commercial conflict. So this is one of the takeaway from these successful stories, that built and sold model has to be flipped now, and we can keep on building, but then we can eye our financial model and our economics in terms of the getting your returns through the rent. And this is LA's fantastic example. Our team, MPT team, could get this opportunity to visit LA, and there we realized that they don't follow, like if you remember, EWS housing unit size is smaller than LIG, which is smaller than MIG, which is smaller than HIG. LA is a fantastic vision that whosoever you are, if I am going to provide you affordable housing, that doesn't mean your space would be very short. If you are a 5 people household, then you should be given larger housing unit, irrespective of your paying capacity. So your rent will come down, but the housing typology or housing per capita built space given to the every family member will not be compromised. So the quality of life, it doesn't mean it has to be a big lavish unit size, but yes, quality of services cannot be compromised upon. So all these pictures we have taken from there, and then quality of life. India will take certainly some time, because first priority wise we are struggling with supplying inventory for the low income group as of now. But as the time passes by, we can adopt such instruments, and we can actually fit in this ideology of giving quality services to everyone, LIG, MIG, HIG, or whatever class you are in. And houses can be lavish, that's fine, but this quality service quality cannot be compromised at any point of time. Coming to the last phase of the discussion, what strategies can be adopted to regularize housing what strategies can be adopted? We can go for build to rent model precisely, and direct strategies for feeding into in the housing stock building in the nation. Rental housing policy and the guidelines can be supported by a robust framework, and how it can be applied. If you remember, whenever you go for a rent in any state, there is no system in place. How much you need to pay is your owner and tenants. It's mutual decision. There is no framework where the city administration will let this area will have higher slab of this rent and lower slab of this rent, and that is missing. So where this rental thing is also not able to flourish naturally. Rent Control Act should support this housing policy, rental housing policy. Shared housing is important. All sort of hostels. If you see all school and university hostels, working people also what we call PGs, what we call as working women hostels. That is shared housing only, and this takes rental and shared housing. This takes almost 30 to 40% of your housing shortage load away. So that bridges the gap by 30 to 40%. So it's remarkable. It's huge. So we just need to, as a city administration, as a housing policy maker, we need to look into this closely, and and then EWS LIG share of overall the inventory we shared, we can actually improve upon building this category houses more. And a redevelopment for the slum housing. So this is a classic case with Delhi. I mentioned intentionally, because in case of Delhi, 45%, as I mentioned, colonies are unauthorized. But as a politics of planning, which derives the whole development in Indian cities, it is at times what we see that colonies are getting are legalized. From unauthorized status, they are getting authorized status. But that development, the problem in terms of the services which they lag behind, in terms of the fire tenders access, in terms of the hygiene and health related infrastructure, it doesn't get improved. So the way I was living initially, it was illegal. Now next day, government will legalize my stay here, and then it will become legal. But the quality of life, the kind of services I was getting will not change. So that becomes a problem. So a political decision being taken to regularize, but the redevelopment has never occurred. So that actually doesn't help you. That gives you a sort of consent that yes, this is my land, but the quality of life is still deteriorated. So there we want to hit further that regularization and followed by redevelopment has to be done as early as possible. Infrastructure improvement plans. What all can be done in terms of see these slums, unauthorized colonies, JJ cluster we call in Delhi. They will not go away overnight. It will take time. Even if you make a phased plan, we might take 5, 7, 10, 8, 20, 15, 20 years. So in 3-4 phases, we will get rid of these uninhabitable spaces. But meanwhile, for those 10, 15 years plan period, in those 3-4 phases, how the infrastructure within the slum area, within the unauthorized colony can be improved. So there are some suggestions how we can get rid of those uninhabitable areas. Taking some learnings from Delhi's case, Delhi Jal Board, which is the water utility which is responsible for water supply and wastewater management in Delhi. Delhi Jal Board has a target of supplying piped water to all, even if 45-50% of population is in unauthorized colonies. Still they are targeting to supply water, and right now Delhi is 83% of the population getting supplied water through pipe wide water network. This is too good. I mean, irrespective of the authorized and unauthorized argument, I'll try to make you get water through a pipe supply. That's a big plus. So that sort of vision will help. Sooner or later, if you don't get unauthorized, that's okay. But meanwhile, that point of time, you'll get access to the clean water, and then wherever 17% population is not getting pipe supply, DJB is having their own tanker water supply system. So the potable water from WPTP is directly supplied to the housing areas. They have a target to connect the whole Delhi by seaward network. Yet as of now, this is just 55%. 45% is yet not connected unauthorized colonies because of many reasons. So like development density is not achieved, so it cannot work in a seaward framework. Also, at times you don't get that road width to lay down the seaward lines. But meanwhile, what is happening there, they are given the access to the septage system, a robust septage system. For solid waste management, before coming to solid waste management, I also would like to share one of the policies of Delhi government. This is government of NCTD, and they have this subsidy of supplying 21,000 kiloliter water per connection, per household. So taking like 135 liter per capita in a household of 4.5 to 5 person in a household, 21,000 liters sort of volume we get, and that much volume is free to everyone, irrespective of the authorized, unauthorized, and low income group, high income group, and which is a fantastic example. Economics might not work in this way, but yes, supplying water to everyone in case of Delhi, this is one of the key learnings, and how government of Delhi is managing. It's quite fantastic to learn. And coming back to the solid waste part, because so much unauthorized areas around, you have Safai Nigrani Samitis within the unauthorized colonies, JJ clusters, and then what they have planned, that they are targeting zero waste wards, a ward boundary, and no zero waste ward means there is no ward which will send any of its green waste outside the ward. So all the green waste within the ward has to be composted within the ward, and only recyclable and inert material will leave out of the ward. So that ward boundary or the other precincts can be decided by the municipal corporation. So these are the major primary attempts which can be taken away and be applied to any sort of city across the India or world, where you will take time to get the slums and JJ clusters build over their current status to a habitable scenario. And meanwhile, these tools can help them to provide a better and healthy lifestyle. Common solution which we would like to appreciate here, a co-treatment system. It's nothing new in this. What I mean here is, meanwhile your sewage system is not reaching to the farther part or to the countryside. Meanwhile, there has to be a system of septage with a proper septic tank, and then that septic tank can be desilted by a proper channel, and the treatment of that fecal sludge can be done by these STP, centralized STP itself. So there is no need of putting any additional infrastructure for the septage. But yes, once the sewer lines will reach to that place, this septic tank, this STPs only will able to treat their sewage through pipe supply. So this is win-win situations. You are not putting any land infrastructure for non-sewered areas. You are not putting any sort of treatment system for dedicatedly for them, but you are covering them, you are connecting them to central sewage infrastructure. Meanwhile they get connected to the pipe supply, to the connected to the seaward supply, and connected to a proper solid waste management system. These are intermediate steps which normally I've seen in Indian cities. We plan for 15 years, but in that 10-15 year plan period, what will happen to these unauthorized colonies day-to-day basis, monthly basis? That is not considered so far. Model UACs, model awards are this sort of awards are being given. Swachh Bharat, Swachh Sarvekshan, all these are giving these teeth to the municipal corporation, ODF plus sort of rating. So this will enhance the unauthorized colonies also to achieve these status, and then ULBs together and the state authorities together can make the funds flow from top to bottom and to make them more habitable before getting them shifted to a really good housing unit. Community taps can help. Yeah, informal sector involvement in the solid waste, fine. And livelihood based based regulation plans can also going to make a fantastic system. So yeah, so that's what I was actually trying to make point here, learning from Delhi's experiences, learning from different part of the unauthorized colonies across, in spite of just jumping to a very smart city in coming 10 years. These are the solutions to be adopted by type B cities, and taking this case of Delhi, it's a capital city. 1.9 crore population as of now. 20 years it will cross the Tokyo. It's a capital city, and hence still these solutions are very much part and parcel of the solution we are eyeing to make Delhi more habitable in coming 20 years through this master plan. And then this is one of the eye opener. Yes, this sort of system where you just go back and forth, and then you try to make your city more habitable, especially those unauthorized areas. So thank you so very much for your patient listening, and thank you GNCTD. And if we have some questions, we can take up some questions. These are my particulars. You can reach out to me anytime, lsharma@niu.org. You can also take my number from architect Vivek Sehgal. And whenever you are in Delhi, you come to India Habitat Center. It's sort of a Makkah for architects, it is said, and it's a fantastic meeting place, and we can always meet. So reach out to me for any clarification, any question, and any future prospects in case you have. Thank you so very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was undeniably a great presentation. Now, I would like to invite questions or any queries from our listeners. You can either type your questions in the chat box or unmute yourself to ask.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Sir, I do have a doubt. Like you told that there are many unauthorized areas in Delhi. So, sir, what are the steps which can be taken to eradicate them?
Yeah, so unauthorized colonies in Delhi are just not a matter of encroachment, which we witness normally across other states. Encroachment along the railway side, encroachment along the drains, or other government properties. But encroachment, unauthorized colonies in Delhi have different sort of character. Refugee colonies during the partition time, when the state got division, so immigration happened due to furthermore reasons. So these colonies are not illegal colonies. First of all, this is one wrong impression goes into the mind that they are illegal. They are not legal. They are not illegal. They are legal. The plot is owned by the owner, but the development happened there is not as per the guidelines. Are you getting my point? There's a difference between illegal colonies and unauthorized colonies. All of them are not illegal. They are refugee colonies, but the development did not happen according to the building bylaws or the street width and other things. So yes, Delhi government is in the process of getting them regularized. First of all, they should get a regularized status, and then redevelopment. So slowly they are picking up, and then they are trying to redevelop them. Kidwai Nagar is the fantastic example. It's under redevelopment. It's a big chunk of unauthorized colony which is getting developed now. So that's the way Delhi government is addressing this issue. Yeah.
Sarveshwar sir, I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
Sir, like you showed us the big data for the people who ride bikes in Sydney city. Sir, how do you collect that data first before actually putting them into the software? What I want to know that what was the process to collect that data? Like how do you know that how many people did ride that much far, and how do you know that the girls they didn't ride too far and the boys they ride too far? Like how was the basic data collected?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Vivek. The data was collected from the Transport for New South Wales, which is the agency that provides all the public transport infrastructure. That includes public bicycle sharing system, that includes the railways services, that includes the metro and light rails. Light rails is more like trams that you see in Europe, and also bus services and ferry as well. So all these transport infrastructure are run by the Transport for New South Wales, and they have a public bicycle sharing system, which is very similar to many of the Indian cities these days. So I know I have been experiencing such projects in Pune, Bhopal. I'm not sure because in Chandigarh also they have this PBS. Many of the cities are coming up with public bicycle sharing schemes. So what that does there in Sydney is that you can only access that bicycle through an app, a mobile app. Just like you have the COVID app that you have. I don't know what it is called in India. I think they have some app, right, where you can put in that, how are you feeling? And is there any person nearby who has a COVID? So that kind of a smartphone app that you have in your phone, you can download it from the Transport for New South Wales webpage. And whoever is using public bicycle, they must have that app to unlock the bicycle. So every bicycle have a QR code, just like you do the Paytm, you scan the QR code on the public bicycle, and then it suddenly gets your location. Just when you unlock this bicycle from a particular location, it gets your coordinates, that is the latitude and longitude. And that's how we know where that point is. And that data is located on the back end, okay, whenever you unlock it. And then as you unlock it, the app knows that you are going through the route, okay? It takes all the coordinates every 10 seconds. So it locates you every 10 seconds how you went. And that's how it creates a network of locations, okay? Network of latitude and longitudes. And it also knows where you ended and docked the bicycle, okay? And same with the public transport as well. So I shown the public smart card data, which is Opel card is used in buses and trains. So that same as well. We know where they started, we know where they ended, and we also know every 10 seconds of their traces. So all this data are in the background server. They generally come in CSV files formats to us, which is not quite difficult to know. It's just like an Excel file, but it will have latitude and longitudes for 10 seconds. But we need a lot of power to process that data. So what I used that time to visualize this data is called a CartoDB. I don't know many of you know or not, but it's you can actually search up. It's called CartoDB, C-A-R-T-O. So that's a sort of a data visualization engine which helps you bring together all this data and visualize that. And you saw that how the bikes were moving in real time and the dots as well. I recently did another project in London as well with the King's College London guys on the air quality, where we did a very similar study. What we did was we installed sensors on the school bags, on the bags of every school kid in 6 London schools, and how they moved ahead through the city. And each point, every 10 seconds, we recorded what is the air pollution level in the street, and then mapped it through the same CartoDB. It's actually pretty powerful software. But yeah, obviously, I learned each of these software. It takes around 6-8 months for me to learn. I have around 6-8 software capabilities. including Tableau, CartoDB, which are pretty useful and fascinating when you have such data. And I know in India, we might not have data at this scale at this point, but with time, I see many of the cities are coming up with very innovative card solutions. I know Ahmedabad has a integrated card system where a single card is used for property tax. It is also used for paying your water bills. It is used for your transport in buses or trains. So that leaves traces of all your data. But what is important is that we need to also respect privacy, right? So actually in the team that we worked, there were around 6 people in my team. One guy who is a cybersecurity specialist, and he knows how to identify the data, right? That's very, very important because these are data from persons and you can't disclose the names or who they are. So when the data came to me from Transport for New South Wales, to visualize it, I don't know who that person is, but I know is he a male or female, what is the age of that person, because that's the profile information from the app that I get, but I don't know who is that person. And that is also very important, that you respect the privacy. When you talk about big data, many people use it in unethical ways, but also we need to talk about privacy as well. I think that's the whole process. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very much, sir. Very much. But I think this kind of system, it will take a lot of time here in India.
It will take some time. It's not that we are not having, as I said, public bicycle sharing. If I'm not wrong, there are about 26 cities under the 100 Smart Cities mission that introduced the public bicycle sharing scheme, from Bhubaneswar to Newtown, Kolkata. Many cities are doing it, but it's important. Are they using the QR code or not? That is important.
Yes.
Or we can't just provide infrastructure. We need to maintain them, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And these data sets helps us to maintain them, to create a revenue stream which helps us to manage that infrastructure and also fund the future infrastructure. If we don't know who is using the bicycles, when they're using, we just providing the infrastructure doesn't go,
Yes,
and
yes.
some of the cities are progressing. I know, for example, last year, as part of the Pune Living Lab as well. In fact, tomorrow I'm meeting Mr. Lovelesh Sharma's director of NIUA. I'm meeting him tomorrow as well on a very similar project, looking at data-driven approaches to Indian cities. We know that Indian cities are having this data, but it's the skill that is more important. Do we have the skill to understand and make sense of this data? That's also very, very important. I think with more skills as well, as we'll see such projects coming up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Lovely, sir, I have a question for you. Like,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Is there any provision of earmarking rental housing or for the floating population in MPT 2041?
Yeah. So what we are proposing for out of the total housing stock we propose, 15 to 20%, we are still in the discussion mode, and this 15 to 20% would be rental housing, and that 20% of the rental housing further can be divided into internally EWS in terms of the housing for laborers, in migrating laborers. So that 20% stock will be further having 3 to 4 tiers of the quality of the size of the construction. So yes, there is a provision, but it's not a separate land given to a developer. We are asking this much of the housing inventory to be developed for particularly rental purpose. What is going to be affected? It is going to be considered in the long-term financial returns you get. Once you plan to sell them in 10 years, your financial modeling is different. But when you are going into the rental mode, this return period would be 25 years, but your return would be almost 3 or 4 times, and it is foolproof also because government backing is also given, so that whenever somebody comes to Delhi, government push them to come to your shelter. So then it's win-win situation for both. So that's how MPT is addressing it.
And will it be built on a separate land chunk or?
Not on separate land for sure, because as I mentioned, still we have 21,000 hectares of land which is yet to be developed. So out of the new developed part, this portion would be precisely for rental housing.
Okay.
I think that's answer your question probably.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. There is a question in the chat box from Dalveer Kaur Beer. What should be the first step taken for research, and how can we go in an organized way while researching? As while researching, I got
I
deviated
think you
from
are
the
in the
path.
right person to comment upon this.
Yeah, this question I think is directed towards Sarveshwar sir.
Well, I have been through research process for the last 10 years, and especially with the PhD, that this question, kind of got to my mind, and I gone back and forth several times. But I find the most important thing when beginning research is having a question. If you don't have a clear research question, you will never find an answer. Your answer will never be appropriate. Okay. For example, when I started my PhD, that was particularly on the data-driven approaches to smart cities. That was my PhD on, and that was specifically looking at the 100 smart cities in India. I didn't show that slides because of constraints of time, but it's basically looking at, the question, the single question, and that has to be very simple and answerable in simple terms. You can't have a question which is too complex that you don't understand yourself. If you don't understand yourself, you'll never be able to explain it to your others, and that is very, very important. So I started with a very simple question. How can I compare cities across such a big and complex country like India? And what are the approaches that I can compare cities on several indicators, right? And I looked at, global cities, and, then they say for these questions of what are the metrics or indicators that I can compare. Lovelace sir was talking about slums. That is actually a very important indicator, how we compare cities, in India, that what percentage of people are living in slums or unauthorized or illegal, whatever you use the term, across the country. And you can compare a very good city with not so good city in terms of that kind of metrics. And I sort of took 64 indicators that I found through 4 years of my PhD, and use that data to basically go about the work. But basically beginning with a question is very, very, you cannot convince people in research or any setting in terms of your research if you do not have a clear question. And the second step is going to Google Scholar. I always recommend people, many people don't know. People use Google a lot. We use Google for everything that we do, right? If it is mobility, or visiting a park, or finding a food store, or going to a restaurant. But for researchers, the most sacred temple is Google Scholar. Go to Google Scholar. Google has a separate engine called Google Scholar. Go there, search your questions. So as I said, if you want to, for example, search, what are the responses, what are the strategies for slums? Some people ask that question, right? How can we solve the issues of slums? Even if you go and search slums and informal housing, this kind of keywords, you will find that there will be a series of articles that are published globally that will emerge on your screen. And that helps you to build your questions to your understanding before really deep diving into your own work. If we don't know what is the existing state of research, we'll be reinventing the wheel, wasting a lot of time. First, through Google Scholar, that helps us to track what others have already done in the field. See that as a benchmark, and then see what are the gaps in research that exist. What are the new things that we can add to the debate, okay? Or take that to a new dimension, or question some of the existing facts. But if we don't know what is the existing state of research, the research is never going to be bang on right, or it's not going to be very impactful. Okay, I think that's the first couple of baby steps that we can take for research.
And just to add, Mr. PRAHARAJ mentioned in a layman language, because I understand the curious mind of the students in Ludhiana and Phagwara and Amritsar, all where technically, as you mentioned, Mr. PRAHARAJ, I would like to mention the students, like it's like going to buy a clothes to a mall. So before you want to go to buy a clothes in the mall, you have to do two exercises. Number one, you have to look back to your wardrobe. What are you short of? आपके पास कम क्या है. So that's what he's mentioning. What is not done? If you are having 10 shed and if you buy another shed, useless. So then first check the inventory. What all is done in this particular area, and you won't waste your time doing that. And second is your interest. What sort of color? What sort of material you like? So then that's the second step. First, you are done with the research question identification. Then you can find the right person whom with you can take over further your research, the university, the area where you want to go to. But then first find that what actually you want to buy. That's the research question. Yeah. Yeah, over to you, Vivek sir.
Yes, sir. Hosts, you can ask for some more questions. Anybody else who is having some question? Lovelace sir, you mentioned those 2100 kiloliters of water, free water. And for how much time is that water?
It's
Is to be used?
per day, 21,000 kiloliter water per day.
Per household?
Per household. So their calculation is like 135 UDPFI mentions. So
Yes,
per
sir.
day requirement into 4.5 or 5 household size, that becomes 21,000 liters. So that is per day. It's per day free, per connection, per household. Yeah.
Okay. So, any other question? So I guess there are no questions. Sir, thank you, Lovelace sir. Thank you, Sarveshwar sir. I guess Dr. Shankar has already left the meeting because of his prior appointments. We are so obliged that all three experts spared their precious time and interacted with the students and shared their knowledge through presentations. We learned a lot from this session. Dr. Shankar t- instructed that it is not actually time to celebrate, whereas Dr. Sarveshwar, he told that there are a lot of opportunities in future. And Sarveshwar sir, he presented many facts and figures from Delhi government, the Delhi master plan. So overall, it was a very learning experience for all of us. Thank you so much, Lovlesh sir. Sorry, Lovlesh sir, and thank you so much, Sarveshwar sir, for being with us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and all the very best to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a guest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.